vision is that my business will be at a place, not in the not too far future where my wife and our children and I can go and live somewhere overseas for a portion of the year. I can do some work internationally with international clients. We can see the world and we can benefit from the fact that I can do what I do from anywhere. So that's one piece that I think is really important to me is, um, you know, the
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. Today's guest is Hakim Lakhdar, Florida's #1 transformational leadership coach, international speaker, and the host of the podcast Access Your Leadership. With a rich background spanning over 15 years from directing global programs at Harvard Law School to advising leaders across industries and continents, Hakim brings a rare blend of strategy, soul, and service to his work. He believes that most leadership challenges aren't solved by tactics, but by uncovering the unseen patterns that block clarity, confidence, and compassion. As a devoted father of twin boys and a husband first, Hakim leads from inside out, helping high performance senior executives and entrepreneurs navigate career pivots, communication breakdowns, and limiting beliefs with courage and authenticity. Whether you're stepping into the first leadership role or realigning your career with your values, Hakim creates a powerful, heart-centered space for transformation, one conversation at a time. Hakim, thank you for coming in. Let's dive in.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction.
You're more than welcome. Hakim, tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become a leadership coach.
Anytime I get this question, when I first got this question early on in my coaching career, I would always try to come up with a very smart, sophisticated, pithy response to that. And honestly, the one I landed on and I use most regularly, if ever asked that, is I don't like seeing people unhappy at work. I don't like seeing people struggling in their careers. And I saw a lot of that through my own career and people really not having anywhere to turn to. And often when there were people struggling in their careers, if we track that back, it would track back oftentimes to poor leadership. And so I thought, why not go right to the source? I've worked with leaders my entire career. They're an incredibly talented, inspiring bunch of professionals. And there are sometimes opportunities to improve that leadership so that it improves the life and performance of those that they lead.
And how does your journey look like, though, from the moment you started your coaching business to where you are at today?
Oh, as most journeys, lots of twists and turns, lots of ups and downs, right? It's never just a straight line from A to B. So I think the journey for me has been really valuable and really exciting and inspiring in a lot of ways. I think for me, when I first started, I was looking at specifically focusing on leadership, but also with this also added benefit of career development and career enhancement. And what I found was the career conversation always comes up. What I really was passionate about was how to improve people's leadership and how to get them back to loving their leadership. So as that started to evolve, I was naturally working with more senior leaders, higher and higher up the sort of the org chart, if you will. And little by little, I had a client here and a client there, and would try to figure out how do I get more clients and how do I get more conversations and make more connections and establish myself as not only an authority in this space, but also someone who adds real insight and a unique perspective that would be seen as valuable. And that's kind of what I've developed over the time that I've been coaching.
So it's been about 5 years and 6 months almost.
Yeah.
Uh, cool. And is there a specific good target audience that you're going after? Like apart from leaders, so is there a specific industry or?
So I worked almost for 2 decades with legal professionals from around the world. I worked at the ABA, worked at Harvard Law School, I worked at Miami Law. So always with lawyers, but I'm not a lawyer myself. I just found that to be a group that I really enjoyed being around and enjoyed working with. And also there was lots of opportunity there to support them in their leadership development. So when I started my practice, I did so because I wanted to work with any leaders in any industry. So I'm not specific to any one industry. I, of course, continue to work with legal professionals because of my background and because of my exposure to them and my network. But I have worked with leaders in all kinds of industries all over the world. I have an incredible global network, having worked in places like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and traveled extensively. So I really do have an international network. What I've found is, not because of any one thing that I've chosen to do or focus on, but a lot of my clients are now much younger than my original clients were. A lot of my clients were my age or older. Now they're tending to skew a bit younger because they are this new generation of leaders. They are this new generation who are coming up and founding their own organizations and their own businesses. And they realize that one of the things that they haven't had as much exposure to, given their limited professional years, is leadership development. So to be working with someone not just on tactics, as you mentioned in your intro, but actually on transformational leadership, that has been much more of an audience that I've been focused on too.
Hmm. And where do you find your clients right now? What is the marketing channel that's working best?
So most of my clients, given what I do and the way that I do it, come through referrals. Trust and connection are essential in the type of coaching that I do because it's not just a, sort of lecture series, if you will. It's not me just saying, okay, here are the top 10 ninja hacks to becoming a better leader. It's more about, kind of peeling back some layers and going a bit more in depth so that the transformation can occur. So referrals are a big source for me. People who get to know me, they have access to me, they know what I'm about, how I approach coaching. Then they put me in touch with individuals who they think would benefit from it. The other source, though, naturally is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I've got a number of followers. I've got my regular posts. I do videos. I do LinkedIn lives, and try to put out as much content on there. But I'll be honest, that often for me is in support of like social presence, so that I have that presence online, so that if someone has been referred to me and they want to look me up and get a sense of what I'm about before we talk or even after we talk, there's evidence there that this is what I do and this is the way that I do it and the way that I think about it and the way that I speak about it. So that ends up being like a very useful reinforcing mechanism.
Most of them are in referrals. Is there a strategy behind that, like building a referral network? Do you have like an email list, or do you have like an incentive to grow it?
Yeah, so I think the email list is an interesting one, and I do have an email list, and I do collect and manage all of the relationships that I create. I think the strategy that I have used, again, given the unique approach to coaching, especially from this sort of transformational lens, is just being out there with people in my network. I have a number of professional networking organizations that I'm a part of. I do regular public speaking so that people have access to me. And I think that as people have access to me, the ideal client, if you will, as we start to form that for ourselves, but even when we're out there in the world, they emerge naturally. They sort of set themselves apart. They will come to you, you have conversations with them just to connect. Maybe if it's not even a prospecting call, but it's just to simply meet one another, and all of a sudden start to form this ideal client based on the regular conversations that you're having with these like-minded people. And I think that has been a good strategy for me. The other piece is I'm very open about just serving my community, serving the people in my network without me sending an invoice every time that I do. And when people get more access to me, they start to see the value of what I do and the way that I do it. And then that naturally becomes something that either they themselves decide they want to engage with, or they say, wow, that was such an amazing hour spent. I know 10 people who would benefit from working with you in that way.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And when it comes to these live events, are they mostly locally in Florida?
No, they're not. Most of them, as we all know these days, even if people are local, they just want the Zoom link. So everyone's hopping on Zoom, and a lot of them that I do virtually. I'm doing a big keynote that is in person next month in Florida. That's a big annual conference. People will be there in person. It'll be a large conference event, but most of them are done virtually because that's the most accessible to people. And I do workshops for multinational organizations that have employees all over the world, and they just send out the Zoom link and schedule the time, and people just pop in and they can engage in that conversation, regardless of where they are in the world or what the time zones are.
Hmm. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I like that because I've had guests in the podcast that either do a lot of local or either do Zoom mostly, which is the easier option, obviously. And so when it comes to the future goals that you have for the next 1 to 3 years, what are some of the goals that you're working towards?
Well, those are, there are all kinds of different things. I mean, my vision is that my business will be at a place, not in the not too far future where my wife and our children and I can go and live somewhere overseas for a portion of the year. I can do some work internationally with international clients. We can see the world and we can benefit from the fact that I can do what I do from anywhere. So that's one piece that I think is really important to me is, um, the careers that I had prior to launching my coaching practice required that I be in the office, required that I be at these in-person events. There was, that need for that physical appearance. But what I do now, as I shared, people are happy to engage in coaching via Zoom. So that's allowed me to now do Zoom from anywhere in the world. So that's a big goal, sort of larger vision for myself. In terms of business goals, I do fractional coaching for organizations. So that allows me to come into an organization and not just coach one person, but actually coach that leader and their entire leadership team or their entire team if they're, a team lead or a department head. And as I do that there are constraints on my bandwidth to do that. So I can only have a handful of clients at that level or at that level of engagement. And ultimately, when I get to that threshold where I'm, nearly there anyway, I'm going to start to bring in some junior coaches. And then what I'll do is I will focus on coaching just the CEO or the COO, and the leadership team members will get access to one of my junior coaches, which then frees me up a little bit to, to do some more high level one-on-one coaching with other one-off clients.
So basically, when it comes to these fractional coaching organizations, you're trying to do more of those in the future?
Yeah, I'm already nearly at capacity. I probably would only take on 3 or 4 at a time. So I've got probably 1 or 2 more spots left for that. And once I reach that capacity, income wise, I'm doing as well as I want to be doing. And obviously there's a potential to do more, but it's more of a time constraint. You start to limit your time, you start exchanging that time for dollars, dollars for time, where to reduce that time spent in coaching conversations but not impact the income, what I'll start doing is I'll not be coaching the entire team anymore. My junior coaches will coach the team, and I'll just limit myself to the one, sort of senior client.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the point where your time becomes a bottleneck for you growing your own business. You cannot always coach alone. And even with my consulting offer, what we found is that, yeah, we've had coaches working with us, not just Davis, the founder, initially. So, what when it comes to investments, what resources or support has been most valuable in you growing your coaching business?
Yeah, I think there's the saying you can only take your clients as far as you've taken yourself, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. So, how can you ask people to engage in coaching at a certain level or a certain, investment level if you yourself haven't done that? And I have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in my coaching. I've worked with incredibly high level coaches from around the world, all of the names that most coaches would know. I've worked with them in some capacity or another. I've collaborated with them in some capacity or another. And it just helps me to level up my game constantly because uh, there's a large element of self-coaching that goes into entrepreneurship and to running your own coaching business. And we all have our own limiting beliefs and we all have our own stories, and if we allow those to sort of dictate how we end up showing up for our clients, then we aren't giving all of ourselves to our clients. We aren't serving them as powerfully as we can. So the work that needs to be done on ourselves so that we can then show up free of judgment and we can show up powerfully is essential. A lot of that has come through coaching. I've had business coaches, I've had personal coaches, I've had performance and mindset coaches. The other piece for me is I, gobble down books. I read constantly. And one of the things I think is really important for coaches, especially as they start to think about how are they structuring their fees, what are they charging, is money mindset, working on how they relate to money. And that is something that I invested in very early, was what's my relationship to money? Because when you come out of a career where you're getting a paycheck and you know exactly what your paycheck's going to be every time you get it, to then becoming a coach and it to sort of eat what you kill mentality, where you don't know where your next client's coming from, you don't know, month to month what your income is going to be, to create a level of comfort, confidence with that, knowing that there's a lot of unknowns. Your relationship to money is a big part of that.
Absolutely. And what we did that shift from the full-time job to starting your coaching business, did you find that you weren't as maybe as niche down to the clients you were getting, or you started off only with law, as you said at the beginning? Because what I
No.
found with other coaches is that initially you try to get what you can, right? Because you want to bring in revenue.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the person and their network. I think um, rather than it be like a get what you can mindset, more along the lines of leverage the people in your network first and foremost. I mean, there are many conversations I would have with someone where I'd be asking, do you know anybody who might be interested in this kind of coaching, or, who might benefit from this kind of support, or, thought partnership? And they would say, well, I would benefit from this. Why don't you ask me? I want to work with you. And then all of a sudden they became a client. So sometimes we tend to look too far outside of what's right in front of us, and we, whether that's niching down or our ideal client, target audience, all of that stuff, rather than actually look at what's readily available to us and accessible to us. And I think that's where I started. Was I've got a great network. I've worked at some amazing institutions. I've made some wonderful connections and relationships. What if I just reached out to some of them and see where things evolve from there? And then naturally they evolved into me getting clearer on who my ideal client is, and maybe the industries that they most often come from.
Is there something you wish you had known when you first started scaling your coaching business? Is there like an unexpected lesson learned?
From a business angle, not so much, because I think I had a good sense of uh, what what check boxes needed to be checked in order to structure my business and to legitimize my business. The piece I think that was most unexpected for me was how much work I would have to put into myself along the way. And I think that's something that gets overlooked or underestimated, is because you're going to come up against a lot of challenges that are going to make you question your decision to do this, how you're doing it, how people are receiving you, what you said, what you posted, what their responses are, what their lack of responses are. All of that starts to create this story in our minds of, what does this say about me? And if we let it tell a story that doesn't serve us, then we're going to find ourselves going down a really destructive path, versus adopting a really healthy, strong, growth oriented mindset where it's all okay. I mean, my wife and I have a mantra in our home where it's okay, we're okay, because there were many moments where we didn't know if we were going to be okay. And we had little kids at home, and we've got a beautiful house, and we've got two cars, and we've got expenses and things that we need to worry about, and to walk away from a job where you knew what your paycheck would be every couple of weeks or every month to, okay, now we're diving into this new entrepreneurial journey. There were a lot of unknowns, and that could have really thrown us for a loop. But I think that uh, once I saw the unexpected, wow, I'm going to really need to do a lot of work on myself to make sure that I'm in the best place possible every day. That that's where I put the focus.
And since you mentioned challenges, what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing today in scaling your coaching business? Apart from capacity, we talked a little bit about your capacity and like being limited because there's only like limited number of hours you can coach people. So hiring is one thing that you're going to work on. Are there any other challenges that um, are delaying the scale right now?
Yeah, I think for what it's worth, the business is scaling quite well, but there are always challenges. And one of the biggest challenges, especially as more and more people move into this space, is how do you differentiate yourself? How do you create an experience for people where they don't just think, oh, you're just another coach? And I call myself a transformation architect because it's really important to me that I'm not just categorized in the coach category, and then people can make their assumptions about what that is based on one conversation they've had with another coach, or coach they liked or didn't like. And again, there's all kinds of reasons why that may have occurred: fit, personality, you know, philosophy, whatever it might be. Uh, I don't want that to impact the people that I can be in conversation with. So differentiating myself has been something that I've been really mindful of. And again, I've been playing with this name, not even calling myself a coach anymore and calling myself something different, so that, it prompts the question, oh, what is that? Tell me more about that. So that it then initiates a conversation. Because I think, I did a post about this today. Someone asked me yesterday, how do you convince people to work with you? And I laughed and I said, I don't convince anybody to work with me. That's not in the business of convincing people to work with me. Ultimately, they have to decide that for themselves. It's a choice. But the way that they are presented with the opportunity to even think about that is by being in conversation with me. So if I can distinguish myself from other coaches by being someone who creates insight and creates an environment or a container for conversation that's unlike any they've ever been in, well, now I become memorable. Now I become, distinguished from other coaches, and people start to gravitate to me.
Mhm. And I assume also like in your funnel, there's like always a discovery call or like an initial call to just to get to know you first and see if it's a good fit. Even from your perspective, you might even be the person that says no, even though they say yes, coming to your program.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. No,
mhm.
that's a really important point to make too, because I think, when coaches, to your earlier point, you're just sort of taking what you can get when you get started. Um, if you can start that process of being selective early on, it will set you up for great success. Because I learned that much later on in the process of, I don't have to say yes to everybody, and I get to choose who I work with and how we work together, because it's as much of a selection for me as it is for them. And I think that those connection calls, those discovery calls are so important, because it gives you an opportunity to sort of evaluate that fit, both for them but also for you as well as the coach.
How do you currently handle the balance between delivering great client results and managing business growth on the other side? So basically doing the coaching and even finding time to do these podcasts like with me or even like to grow your
Yeah, as I'm sure a lot of coaches do, or if they aren't, they should consider doing. I use a uh, calendar scheduling app, and that has been incredibly helpful. So I limit my hours. My hours are structured in a way where I know that I'm going to have available time for clients to coach in these blocks on these days. And then I also know, when I look at my calendar, I've got availability for content creation. I mean, as you know, I do my own podcast, so I've got to, and I do the editing and I do all of it. So, as I go through all that, I've got to make sure that there's time allocated for that. Not to mention being a father, not to mention being a husband and a brother and a son and a friend, and all the other roles that we play in our day to day. I think that being very intentional about where you choose to do your coaching allows for other time to do the other things.
And since you mentioned your podcast, I wanted to ask you, is that also a tool for you to maybe for lead generation? Has that been?
Yeah, it has been. It has been not as like a primary focus. What I found was I was having so many interesting conversations with such interesting people that I thought, why don't I just record these and start to make this a podcast because so many people were sharing their inspiring leadership stories or journeys. But what I found was that through those conversations, it was giving people exposure to me, the way that I speak, the way that I think, the way that I approach leadership. And then they are essentially getting a sample of what my coaching must be like. So it has allowed people to experience me without having to book a call with me and be in conversation with me because sometimes that can be intimidating. Sometimes that can be very confronting. Sometimes people are on the fence. They don't know if, this is someone who's even approachable. So to hear me on a podcast, they actually realize, wow, this guy's easy to talk to. This guy, I like his vibe. I feel like this would be a really nice conversation. Even if we don't work together, that's okay. But actually, to hear me in conversation with somebody obviously gives exposure to my guests, but then it gives other listeners exposure to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for final advice, what advice would you give to other, in this case, going to be mostly career and executive coaches who are going to be watching this? What advice would you give to them that are looking to scale their impact?
Yeah, I think for those who are interested in scaling their impact, there's so much talk about, niching down and getting very clear on your audience. I think there's a lot of value to that. I also think that it's also about making yourself readily available to anybody who wants to have a conversation about, what it is that you do as a coach. And without coming into that conversation with judgment or assumptions about what they can afford or what they can't afford or what they want to create on this call with you, or are they a potential client, or do they fit my category for my ideal client. It's just a lot of overthinking. And actually, if you just show up and you're present and you serve, you will find that maybe that person isn't a client, but you gave them such an amazing experience in that half an hour or an hour that you spent together that they go off and tell 10 people how amazing that conversation was, and then 5 of those 10 people say, I want to talk to that person. And I think that there's a lot of value to just simply being out there and connecting, but not just doing so indiscriminately, but really having intentional focused conversations around how you can help. And then the other piece, I think, which is really important to remember along the way, is not to be afraid to ask for help. It's really important to ask for help, whether it's help that you invest in on your own in your business to get professional support, or it's just reaching out and having to ask, do you know anybody? What would you think about this program if I were to offer this? Here's what I'm thinking about pivoting to. Do you think that would be appealing to people? Asking questions, asking for feedback, asking for help can be really powerful along the way.
Thank you so much, Hakim. And for anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can find you at Hakim Lakhdar in LinkedIn. They could also find you at lakhdarcoaching.com on your website. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing your tips with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciated being here.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.